Hey Wildcats, it's Miss Henson. I'm here for Miss Queen today, and we're just going to take a quick walk through today's lesson and tasks. Today, we're going to work on some independent reading. We're going to do some passage annotation in PowerPoint and work on creating thesis statements. And then we're going to do a little practice scoring of some introductions. Our learning targets for the day are I can introduce a topic, and I can write an effective thesis statement. As you work your way through this video, feel free to pause me at any point to complete the activities, making sure that you're working in order. You can always pick me right back up or rewind me if you need to hear the information again. Let's get started. First and foremost, as always, we got to start with our independent reading. So it's a 10-minute timer today. So time yourself, be truthful, be honest. All right, we know Miss Queen would expect nothing less. Take 10 minutes to work on your independent reading. So go ahead and pause me. You can press play again once you've finished your reading. Welcome back. Thanks for getting your reading done. Now to our sample EOC passages. We're going to read the sample passages together, and we're going to look at some sample introductions to see what students did right. Now keep in mind, when you're taking the end of course assessment, it is online. So we are going to practice our online annotating skills. So before we get started, you're going to want to hop on Schoology and go to the informational writing folder. Download the group leadership passages. It's a PowerPoint file. I'll show you how to use the draw feature in PowerPoint to highlight and to annotate. So go ahead, press pause, get those files, and come on back and we'll get started. Now here are the directions for the EOC. It reads Section 1 of this test assesses your skill to comprehend reading passages and use information from the passages to write an informational or explanatory essay. Before you begin writing your informational explanatory essay, you will read 2 passages and answer 3 multiple choice questions and 1 short constructive response question about what you have read. As you read the passages, think about details you may use in an informational explanatory essay and how a student might organize a successful fundraiser. There are 2 titles of the passages you will read: Thinking Up a Storm and The Teamwork Trap. So these directions are very typical of the essay section of the EOC. The ones for the argumentative essay are very, very similar, just changes a couple of wording details there. So you'll notice that they tell you what type of essay you're going to be writing, in this case, informational or explanatory. Keep in mind, the key to explanatory is the word explain. Your job here is to explain. You've got to read the 2 passages, but there are a couple of multiple choice and short answer constructive response a short answer constructive response question that you've got to do. Sometimes students panic and they skip those. Don't. Take the time to read the passage and answer those questions. Oftentimes they're kind of priming your brain for what you need to do next. I would also note that they give you the topic here, how a student might organize a successful fundraiser. So how would you go about making a successful fundraiser happen? And they give you the titles of the articles that you'll need to reference. Here's a sample passage, one of the 2 passages that you'll read for today's activity. We're going to read it together here in just a moment, all right? But let me show you how you can use the digital annotation feature. So I'm going to back out of presentation mode here, and you'll notice I'm in PowerPoint. Now I'm on my MacBook at home, all right? So it looks a little bit different from your computer, but all the functions inside PowerPoint are the same. In order to annotate on this slide, I'm going to go to the Draw tab. Here at the top, it's 2 to the right of the Home tab. And when I click, I'm going to get some options here. This guy right here is the highlighter, and he works great for annotating passages in a PowerPoint. So when I click on him, I can get a little drop-down menu here. I can pick the size of my highlighter and the colors that I want. I'm just going to stick with yellow for the time being. Now, when I scroll over it, you'll notice I've got a little yellow tabby that pops up here, and I can click and drag to highlight an option. I can also, let's say I want to use the pen here, I could maybe put a question mark next to something I don't understand. I could put a star next to something that I want to come back to. I could underline something if I want to. So you've got a lot of options here. For those of us who are mouse handwriting is a little terrible, you can always explore the ink to text feature if your version of PowerPoint has it. It does help with the writing in ink and then trying to like turn it into text you can actually read. That's super helpful. Another thing I like to do is sometimes just take notes in the add note feature. But one of the things about annotation that makes it such an effective strategy is having your notes directly next to the thing that you were talking about. So give me just a second. I'm going to use the eraser here to erase all this stuff off my slides so I can launch it and then read it. So let me go back into presentation mode. And here's passage 1, Thinking Up a Storm. Tucker and Anita decide on the topic for their upcoming science project. Both are feeling stuck because they're having a hard time coming up with workable ideas. Anita wisely suggests that they start writing down all the ideas that come into their heads, however seemingly silly or unusable. From their list, Tucker points out that they actually have a few really great proposals. In this scenario, Anita and Tucker made use of a brainstorming technique. Brainstorming is valuable when a creative idea is needed and ideas are difficult to generate. One begins the process by throwing out as many ideas as possible, even when some seem crazy. Sometimes the perfect idea comes straight from that list, or sometimes that list just leads to other ideas. There are certain things to consider when brainstorming for a project. First, set the tone by reminding people not to criticize anyone's ideas so that no one feels uncomfortable giving wild suggestions, which can sometimes turn out to be the best ones. Next, try out several brainstorming tools and see which works most effectively. For example, try having everyone write ideas down individually, then compare thoughts aloud. Another option is to start by using a brain dumping technique, where you simply write down everything that comes into your head for 5 minutes, no matter how unrelated to the topic it may seem. For a more extreme method of brainstorming is called reversing, which starts by taking a thought and reversing it. For example, the question of what's the best way to build this website would be reversed and turned into what's the worst way to build this website. An outside of the box question such as this fuels the imagination. Then some of the bad ideas can inspire a great idea that would not have been considered using a more traditional brainstorming method. However you choose to start, the important thing is to play around with ideas until some start to stick. Be creative, be wacky, and have fun with the topic. If you remember that no thought is a wasted thought while brainstorming, you can find some truly imaginative solutions. So that's the reading of our first passage. If I escape back out here, as you're annotating and you know you have to write an informational essay, you're going to need to be able to explain brainstorming and how that might help with our topic, which was how you might organize a successful fundraiser. So the first thing I would do is give this bad boy another quick read. Some of us are really good at annotating while we're reading. Others of us, we need to read the process first and then annotate. Either method is fine, but to go back through here and what are the key points and ideas that you would pull out to tell somebody about brainstorming if you were planning to organize a successful fundraiser. So take a couple of moments to do that. Pause it, tackle that activity, and you can come back for the next part. All right, now let's tackle this sample reading question. So these are samples of the multiple choice questions that they will give you after you read the passage. Here they want to know which sentence from this article best supports the conclusion that when brainstorming, even suggestions that seem unworkable can be helpful. Take a moment to read the 4 answer options and decide what you think the answer is. Then I'll let you know what I think the answer is. Awesome. Let's take a look at our answer options. I picked D as my answer, and I'll tell you why. A talks about how Anita suggests that they just start writing down all ideas that come into their heads, however seemingly syllable or unusable. Now, she does suggest that. That's very true. But which sentence best supports the conclusion that suggestions that seem unworkable can be helpful? That just kind of regurgitates the same statement. It doesn't really add anything to it. B says brainstorming is valuable when creative ideas are needed. and ideas are difficult to generate. Well, yes, it is, but that doesn't necessarily support the conclusion that when you're brainstorming, even unworkable suggestions can be helpful. C says, next, try out several brainstorming tools and see which works most effectively. I mean, you would obviously want to do that, but that doesn't tell us that when brainstorming, why are these even unworkable suggestions helpful? So that gets us to D. That then some bad ideas can inspire great ideas that would not have been considered using a more traditional brainstorming method. So here, it wants to know what's the best support for the conclusion or the idea that when you're brainstorming, even suggestions that seem unworkable can be helpful. D is the only one here that really addresses that directly, where it says bad ideas can inspire a great idea, and that was the whole point of even writing down the bad ideas. So hopefully you agree with me and you chose D. Here's the next passage. All right, it's called the teamwork trap. So this one, you're on your own reading. So go ahead and pause it, open your PowerPoint slide, and take a couple of moments to complete your annotations like Miss Queen has shown you. Remember that when you're annotating to be able to use material in an essay, you want to make sure that you highlight quotes, phrases, ideas that would help you prove your point on your topic about planning a successful fundraiser. So you want to read this article with that frame of reference in mind. So go ahead and pause me, annotate, and we'll get back to work in just a minute. All right, great job getting that done. If we take a look at this article very quickly, there are a couple of things I would point out. This article is all about group thinking and teamwork and how sometimes it can be problematic. So as you're reading this, you want to think about what would kind of be the good side of teamwork here, what would be the bad side of teamwork. And if you were planning a successful fundraiser, what kind of things about teamwork, what traps would you want to avoid if utilizing teamwork was going to help you build a successful fundraiser? Because the only way you're going to build a successful fundraiser is with help. So you want to think about, too, how can you blend these topics about brainstorming and teamwork? How do those two big ideas go into building a successful fundraiser? Here's the next sample reading question. So generally is one sample reading question on the EOC per passage. This one says, which sentence from the teamwork trap best supports the... Sorry guys, it's very late at night. Let me try reading that again. Which sentence from the teamwork trap best supports the conclusion that groupthink can have negative results? So take a moment, read the answers, and decide what you think. Okay. If it were me, I would narrow this question down to probably B or D as my answer. C is kind of up there too, but the article really is about groupthink and about how everybody kind of comes to the center and kind of melds their opinion so that we don't create conflict. So ultimately here, what's going to best support the conclusion that groupthink can have negative results is something that's going to discuss how and why groupthink generates negative results. So I would pick B here. Many people simply want to be agreeable so they are accepted and liked by the group, which is why groupthink occurs, because social pressure is a thing. So hopefully you picked B as the correct answer. Here's another sample reading question. Which of these best expresses the central ideas of each individual passage? So the key here when you're looking at these answers is to make sure that they best express the central idea of each passage, not just one or the other. Take a moment to decide what you think the answer is. Let's take a look at these answers. A says brainstorming can lead to original ideas, which is true, and groupthink can lead to poor results, which is also true. Not quite sure yet if those best express the central idea. Let's look at the other options. B says brainstorming depends upon reversing ideas, and groupthink creates overconfidence. Both of those are true, and both of those are stated in the articles, but they just strike me as being a little bit narrow. What about C? Brainstorming requires more than one person, and groupthink discourages creativity. Well, I know brainstorming doesn't require more than one person. I can brainstorm on my own, and group thinking does discourage creativity, but not necessarily. Some groups can be very creative, so I'm getting rid of C. D reads brainstorming helps create strong work relationships, and groupthink interferes with work performance. Okay, brainstorming can create strong work relationships. Groupthink can interfere with performance. That feels a bit narrow to me, too. When you're looking at central idea, I mean, it's code for theme, overarching idea or concepts. So in that case, I would pick A as my answer because it does the best job of taking in all of the ideas that are expressed in the article. Once you get through that, then you get to the sample writing prompt. So the writing task says there are different approaches to brainstorming when a group gets together to solve problems. Some people believe that working in a group can give people opportunities they otherwise would not have, but there can be problems with this process. Write an informational or explanatory essay explaining what leaders should consider to encourage successful group problem solving. Be sure to use information from both passages in your informational or explanatory essay. So, as you're getting ready to write, you're going to use your annotations of both texts. You're going to need to write a thesis statement about your essay about this topic. Okay, so I'm throwing this one out to Ms. Queen. I thought the topic was something about fundraisers because that was what was listed in the previous passage. I think that's just a picture of the sample directions. This is our topic, all right? So forget the thing about fundraisers. Scratch it. Let's go with this, all right? Sorry about that, guys. Some people believe that working as a group can give people opportunities they otherwise would not have, but there can be problems. So when you write an informational explanatory essay, you want to explain what leaders should consider before encouraging successful group problem solving. This is not asking you which one you would prefer. This is not an argumentative task. This is not should people work in groups or not. That's not what it's asking. It wants to know what should leaders consider? What should they think about to encourage successful group problem solving? What things do they need to think about to make sure that group problem solving is successful? So in my head, I'm going, they need to think about blank, 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 and I need to go back to my articles to pull the ideas to fill in those blanks. The key here is to make sure you use information from both passages, not just one or the other, all right? Both of them. You need to reference both in the process. So make sure as you're generating ideas in your thesis, you consider both articles. So take a moment. Sorry, I advanced the slide here. Take a moment. Write a thesis statement for this topic. Go back to your notes from yesterday, or they're further up in the PowerPoint, and it's available on Schoology, and craft a thesis statement for this particular topic. So pause me, spend some time doing that, and then we'll pick back up with the introductions. All right, let's take a look at these sample introductions. We're going to read a couple of samples of introductions written by students, and we want to decide how we would grade them. High, medium, low. High being like, this is a pretty solid, super effective introduction. It's hitting all the right marks. Medium, this is an okay introduction. It's got some good points. It's got some things it could maybe work on. And low, you're like, man, they tried. They really did take a good shot at it, but it's definitely missing some things that it should have. So let's take a look. Here's the first sample. A group is a unit created for the purposes of doing work. When a group is cohesive, the possibilities of the group, actually as a whole, are infinite. When a group is awkward and difficult, there seems to be no way to work. However, the leader of the group is the person that helps maintain stability and fluidity in the group. Therefore, it's quite important for a leader to know how to promote successful problem solving. So go ahead and decide. You think this is a high quality introduction, a mid range quality introduction, or a low quality introduction? This thing has things wrong with it. So take it a moment, pause me, jot down what you think and why, and then I'll tell you what I think. All right, sample one here, I would rate this very well. This is a high level introduction. Now, do I see things that they could maybe toss in there? Yeah, I generally like to reference the articles that I'm going to reference in the body of my paper. I like to call it tagging, making sure I give the title, author, genre, and date of the pieces that I plan to reference. This also works really well if you're writing about a novel or something like that, to make sure people know what you're writing about before you get started. I would like to see that here, but that doesn't make or break the overall quality here. It's got a solid thesis statement at the end, good transition. Therefore, it's quite important for a leader to know how to promote successful problem solving. I would expect this person in the body paragraph to talk about how to promote successful problem solving by doing blank, blank, blank. Um, it is worth noting that, like that three-pronged blank, blank, blank thesis statement, like it works. It gets you through things, but more savvy writers tend to have a way to group ideas and concepts that keep you from like knocking your reader in the head with you got three ideas you're going to talk about a little later. But sometimes that's the quickest route to a thesis statement, and it's what's called for. This person does a good job talking about group work as a unit, stepping to group work when it's good, group work when it's bad, and then going, all of this group work is dependent upon the leader. So they do a great job using a funnel technique to go from the broad idea of group work to why is it effective, why is it not effective, what can the leader do about it? I'll tell you what the leader can do about it. Read more. Here's a second sample. There's a lot that comes into play when you are group working. Group work can have many disadvantages that can create a problem for the group. To have a successful group problem solving, this is the do's and don'ts for you leaders to take under consideration: brainstorming, confidence, and making the right choice. These three things are important to a successful problem solving. Take a moment and decide what you think. High quality, medium quality, low quality introduction. Now I know what you're thinking. This bad boy, sample 2, definitely has some language issues. It is definitely not attending to formal language and formal tone, and that does give it some marks against it. But hear me out here. I would call this a mid-range. There's some good stuff happening here, despite the fact that there's obviously an attention to grammar and tone that needs to happen to clean up this introduction. They start with the big broad idea of group working. They reference, just like the one prior, that there are disadvantages or maybe advantages. They do attend to the fact that leaders have to take things into consideration. Their problem here is they really could combine this sentence and this sentence to kind of get to a thesis. If you've listed them, saying these three things are important to successful problem solving is kind of irrelevant. They could even combine these last two sentences and say, there are several things that are important to successful problem solving, brainstorming, confidence, and making the right choice. That would at least give it a solid, successful thesis and keep it from sounding a little choppy and disjointed here at the end. So it's got kind of the same funnel technique. It's moving from broader topic to smaller topic. It hits some hiccups with the language and tone, and it hits a major hiccup without having a really solid qualifying thesis. All right, and I would call it the low end of medium. I could see where you could get a little picky here and call it low, but yeah, give kids the benefit of the doubt. Here's sample 3. Oftentimes it's hard for leaders and teachers to encourage group work and problem solving. Maybe a project group just can't get along. Maybe a group is writing an essay and can't decide on a topic. However, I believe that with a few tips and tricks, the goals of group problem solving and teamwork can easily be achieved. So decide if you think it's high, medium, or low. Quality introduction. All right. I'm calling this one out. I'm going low quality here, and here's why. Oftentimes, it's hard for leaders and teachers to encourage group work and problem solving. Is it? Like, I already kind of like want to take issue with that top sentence. Like, oftentimes, it makes it sound like it's just so hard nobody would ever want to do it. Like, the tone there is a little weird. Um, they get into the fact that maybe groups don't work well. They kind of seem one-sided. They seem biased. They don't acknowledge that it could actually go well. They use a good transition there. However, but then they fall victim to "I believe." All right, and my students would tell you, "I believe," all right, is just a phrase you do not need. You definitely don't need it in informational writing because it doesn't. It's not asking you what you believe. It's asking you to present information. All right, it's definitely not asking you to take a position. So in that way, that phrase, "I believe," makes it sound a little bit more argumentative, which means your writing's not appropriate to the task. But even if you were writing argumentatively, you don't need to say "I believe." The fact that you are writing it down shows that you have taken a position and you believe in that particular position. All right? The phrase "I believe" just reminds me of Donkey from Shrek, where he's like, "I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe." All right, I love Donkey, but I don't want to write like him. Okay, is what I tell my students. Plus, that also adds in first person, and now you've got person shifts up in here and creating grammatical issues that you just don't need. All right, this person says that with a few tips and tricks, the goals of group problem solving and teamwork can be easily achieved. You're right, they can, but I don't really know if there's like a solid thesis going here. What can leaders do to make sure group work goes well? I mean, they're kind of getting in the ballpark there, but there's just too many tone issues here, and it makes you wonder if this person really understands what it means to write informationally, or are they confused and think they need to write an argument. Here's sample 4. When working as a group, there are many things you can do to encourage successful group problem solving. In the passages Thinking Up a Storm and The Teamwork Trap, they both talk about working in groups. The first passage, Thinking Up a Storm, talks about the methods of brainstorming and how it can positively impact a group's problem-solving skills. The second passage, The Teamwork Trap, talks about the negative impact of group thinking and how it occurs. So take a moment and decide. High quality, medium quality, low quality introduction. All right. I this one doesn't have some of the grammatical issues that the others have, but here's the issue with this one. There's no thesis. None. This person doesn't take a position. What this person has done is written a summary of the two pieces. They don't actually take a thesis or a position on what it is they are attempting to explain. I will say they have a second person issue. There are many things you can do. Avoid second person when essay writing altogether. You narrows and limits your audience, and you really don't know who that you is. The broader sometimes you can keep that, the more appealing your writing is to a broader variety of people. Back away from YOU very slowly. All right, when you're writing, try to avoid that. I will say this person does tag the articles, but when they do, they fall into this trap of just saying what they were about. And they don't tie that to what leaders need to do to encourage group work. There's no thesis. This is just a summary. This essay isn't going anywhere other than regurgitating exactly what was in those articles, probably article by article. This one overall, low quality. It doesn't use that funnel method. It doesn't step down by topic. It doesn't introduce things in the appropriate order to create the right tone or flow. Here's the last sample. Leaders are the very glue that holds a team together. Without them, the team would just fall apart. That's exactly the reason why a leader should do everything in his or her power to ensure that every member of a group feels not only included, but important and equal. If each member of the entire team feels those things, there's no way that the team cannot successfully solve any problem that comes their way, no matter how big or small. In order for a team to succeed, no person should feel like they do not belong, like they do not matter. They should feel included. So take a moment and decide: high quality, medium quality, low quality introduction. All right, here's my position on this one. I'm going to go medium. Even, mid range medium on this one. Grammar wise, syntax wise, it's very well written in terms of its grammar and syntax, but like the tone here is wrong. Why is this person super duper focused on people feeling like they should belong, they should be included, they should matter? Yes, but that's not really to the topic of what leaders can do to ensure productive group work. It's like hyper focused on one thing, and it doesn't really look at broadly all of the things that were discussed in the two articles. This person's going to run out of like quotes to reference and things to mention from the articles because they have like hyper narrowed their introduction. Um, Plus, I don't see how you break this down and go any further. They should feel included. So then you would think this person would talk about how do you include them in the group, which doesn't, kind of speaks to the topic, but not in the route that the articles were going. It even almost kind of, it's a little like pathos heavy. It's a little heavy on the pulling on the emotional heartstrings. And this is informational writing. You're just here to deliver information. All right? Doesn't mean you can't have some tone with it, but you're definitely not trying to like save all the puppies here. And this person's a little save all the puppies for my taste. All right? This slide gets us to what'll be happening, all right, tomorrow. So I'm going to back out of this PowerPoint here. I'm going to remind you that everything you need to know, all right, is contained within this PowerPoint. All right? So take some time to finish your annotations and things like that, and to take a look at those introductions, and you can even jump into writing your own introduction. Because if I take you back to our learning targets for the day, it's I can introduce a topic and I can write an effective thesis statement. So hopefully you should have an effective thesis statement if you followed the model from the previous slides. And now you should be able to take some time using those models, those samples of what to do and what not to do, all right, to start trying your hand at drafting an introduction to the topic that was presented. Make sure you hold on to all your things so that Miss Queen can take a look at them when she gets back. Thanks for hanging out with me today, Wildcats. If you need anything, like I said, my name is Ms. Henson. I'm Woodland High School's reading interventionist and Ms. Queen's homie, and I am down the English hallway in A109. So have a great day, guys, and remember, it's always a great day to be a Wildcat.